What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I'm making a quick video. It should be relatively quick. Hopefully I'll keep this under 10 minutes. But there's a couple things that I wanted to talk about. One of which is, some injury situation stuff, which, obviously we'll get more into. Our game against the Steelers is on Monday night, so it's our only primetime football game this year. I'm hoping, my hope is that we just don't get embarrassed in prime time, but unfortunately that is something that has happened in the past and could happen this time around. The Steelers are a very, very physical team, and we're not very, so, we'll see what happens there. But then there was also an interesting tweet by Omar Kelly, actually, that I wanted to discuss as well. So first off, let me get into the injury information that I wanted to get out to you. So going into this game against the Steelers, Rashad Jones and Daniel Kilgore are officially ruled out. So again, Daniel Kilgore and Rashad Jones will not play. Now, Evan Boehm, however you say his name, I think it's Boehm. I haven't heard him pronounce it, so I don't know. But anyway, he played pretty well at center last week. The offensive line did pretty solid for the most part. Now, again, the Steelers are a really physical team. They do have a strong defense, so we'll see what happens. They are getting Mason Rudolph back for this game. They are coming off a bye, and it is in Pittsburgh. So there's a lot to favor the the Steelers in this game. And so I'm really just hoping that we can end up keeping it like kind of close too. And so that way it's just like, it's not embarrassing, when it's all said and done, because it's going to be on national television. Everybody it's probably going to be a relatively low viewed game because of the Dolphins, and because the Steelers haven't been doing all that well, although they have had a bit of a turnaround the past couple games, and they are playing a weak opponent in which they, most people reasonably expect them to win. Anyway, but getting into it though, so obviously not having Rashad Jones or Daniel Kilgore is, problematic. Corner Xavier Howard. So Xavier Howard was once again limited in practice all week. He did practice, but he was limited with that knee injury, and he's listed as questionable. Now, he has said, from reports that I've seen, tweets by media members and stuff, it appears that he believes he's ready to play, and so on and so forth. So that will be an interesting thing to look at going into Monday, and who their inactives are going to be. Now, look, first of all, let's remember how Xavier Howard even came onto the injury report. It was kind of out of nowhere. There was no indication, right? Because we had a game. It was about 3 weeks ago now. We had a game. It might have even been the game before the bye. I don't know. Anyway, point is because he's been out the past 2 games. This would be the 3rd one that he would miss if he misses it. I just don't feel like doing the math in my head at the moment on where that comes out to be. Anyway, point is though, he didn't get hurt in any games. There was no indication in practice, from reports that he got hurt in practice. He just all of a sudden ended up on the injury report with a knee. Now, if he does have a knee injury, I'm not saying he doesn't. Now, they called it soreness, right? So, and from everything I've seen, there is no actual, real indication that it's, serious. But, he has been limited in practice and out. Now, okay, so there's a couple sides to this, right? There's a lot of people that are like, yeah, well, we're 0-6 right now, and there's no point to playing him if he's hurt, especially if it's a knee injury, and you don't want to aggravate it or make it worse. And I totally get that and agree with that. But I'm definitely starting to get a little skeptical. Now, look, there's also the side about, maybe they're just holding him back so that way he doesn't get hurt or whatever, so they can trade him. Now, there's only 3 days left, right? But interestingly enough, the trade deadline is the day after the Steelers game on Tuesday, right? So, you know, if he is inactive again for another straight game, you know, maybe that is kind of telling. I mean, it could be nothing, right? It kind of depends on what the ultimate outcome is, right? Because if he really does have some sort of injury or whatever, you know, and they hold him out, then it would be because logically and factually, because they just wanted to keep him, you know, healthy and not push it. But if they did end up trading him before the deadline, right, then logically and factually you could say, well, they held him out because they were holding him back so that way they could trade him and not potentially have issues in that regard, right? It's like the one side is not getting him injured or whatever for the long term for this franchise, to make sure that he stays healthy for the long term for the Dolphins, so you can build around him since he's the only building block we really have, for sure. And then the other side is that you don't want to get him hurt or what have you, so that way you can trade him. We'll see. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out. But I do think that it smells a little funny. So, you know, there's definitely some things about this. I mean, because look, he's practicing all week. And he says, again, from the reports that I've seen, it appears that he thinks that he is ready to play. And so keeping him out might frustrate him, right? And I told you this. I told you before that he was one injury scare away from, like, you know, breaking from this team and not being 100% bought in. But it would have to probably be something major, right? Couldn't just be some little tweak or something. I mean, that could happen at any time, whatever. But he could injure his knee in practice too. So if you really are trying to keep him from injuring himself, even if he's limited in practice, I mean, if it's a knee injury, he could injure it just walking down the street. So why would you practice him? So that's a little fishy, right? It's now been, you know, 3 straight weeks like this of limited practice after he just randomly out of nowhere, you know, showed up on the injury report. When it first happened, when I reported it shocked because, yeah, well, not massively shocked, but it was kind of surprising that he was on there because it was random. It was out of nowhere. There was no indication of it. And in fact, though, you know, it was after a few weeks of us getting our asses handed to us, you know, and me talking about, though, you know, he's one injury scare away. But if this injury is not really what the Dolphins are saying it is, or at least, you know, if he feels he's ready and they hold him out, that could frustrate him and get him upset and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things going on here. We have to wait to see how it actually ultimately plays out before we'll be able to determine definitively where these data points lead, right? Because right now there are a couple different narratives that could be true, right? So we just have to wait and see. But for me, it is a little strange how all of this is being handled. I don't know. So look, I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, there's 3 days. Tuesday, I think it's like 4 p.m. or some shit on Tuesday Eastern time or whatever, I think is the trade deadline. I think it's something like that. Some random arbitrary fucking time. Well, it may not be arbitrary. I don't know that. But anyway, so point is, Tuesday is the trade deadline. So we'll know whether they trade him or not. Now, that's not to say that they also couldn't trade him later at a later date, like after the season, but I don't think that really makes sense. Especially because, I mean, the Dolphins have already paid him all of the, like, guaranteed money and stuff like that. His contract is super friendly to other teams that would want to trade for him. So that's not really a consideration. He's an elite talent who's young, in his prime, so on and so forth. And so, you know, would they give up the kind of compensation that Jalen Ramsey got? That could be part of the reason why the Dolphins haven't traded him yet, if that's the case, if that's what they're going to do. But that also could be why they're keeping him out of the game, because they want to push it to the last minute to really make teams like, you know, drive up the price. Maybe there's a bidding war going on. You know, maybe so far, you know, a couple teams have offered 1 first-round pick and maybe like, you know, a second and a third or something like that. Maybe the Dolphins are waiting for somebody to throw in, you know, a second first-round pick and then maybe like a fourth. Like what happened in the Jalen Ramsey trade. 2 first rounds and a fourth, right? 1 in 2020, 1 in 2021, and what have you. Now, obviously, would that extend their draft? Yeah, but, I mean, you know, again, I don't think any of this approach is even going to be correct to begin with. I don't think that they've shown they can evaluate talent correctly. I don't think that they're going to hit on enough picks just based off of probability and odds. And I certainly don't agree with taking a quarterback high in the first round, which they are guaranteed to do this year and could potentially do again next year, especially if they ended up having, you know, 4 picks in the first round this year and then 3 in next year's draft or whatever it is. So, I mean, look, again, before we can definitively say where all of this data points out or points to, we have to wait and see. We have, you know, a couple more days before that deadline comes and goes. And so we'll see. All right. So like I said, the last thing that I wanted to mention though is Omar Kelly tweeted this out, and I thought it was really fascinating, so I wanted to add it into this video. He says, and I quote, "Confession, no matter how crappy the Dolphins have been the past decade, there are, or past couple decades if we're being honest, there are very few franchises that hold a series edge on Miami. It's weird to see a team that does. The Steelers lead the series 12-11 heading into Monday night's game." So if you know, for those of you who might not quite understand that, what he's saying is it's rare to see a team that has more wins over us than we have over them in our head-to-head matchups against them, right? So more often than not, we end up having, you know, more wins than they do. And then there was this reply, let's see, by JWA. Miami used to be one of the winningest franchises in the NFL, and even when they've been bad, they've rarely been terrible. The reason why I wanted to read that and discuss that just a little bit, and I'm over 10 minutes now, but it is what it is because it plays to one of my points, right? So yes, we've been one of the main points that I've been saying about this whole approach, the tanking approach, and certainly the level to which they've taken it, right, is that yes, I am frustrated, just like any other Dolphins fan, that this team has been stuck in a cycle of perpetual mediocrity. And look, I definitely don't agree with this, something that I've said in the past overall, and I was half joking when I said it. But there was part of me that kind of felt it at the time, and so that's part of why I said it. But in the past, I had said, you know, maybe, you know, mediocrity is the worst place to be, because at least when you're, you know, on either side of it, you know exactly what you are. You're either good or bad. But at the same time, if you're mediocre and average, you know that too. But honestly, how shitty and how bad this feels, and how, you know, now that I know what it's like to be a Browns fan a couple years ago, like, no, I would certainly take mediocre over the type of atrociously bad that we are now. But the thing is, my point is that I've been saying for a while, why do people think that the answer to get better from mediocre is to intentionally be far worse? Especially when there is absolutely no legitimate, real indication that this type of approach can actually work in this type of sport and environment and so on and so forth. And in fact, there's far more evidence to suggest that it's going to be a complete and massive failure than anything else. So, you know, we are forced to endure a massively terrible season. I mean, yes, the past couple weeks we kept it close. Last week we scored more points, but also keep in mind, you know, Fitzpatrick is going into the game this week, but he played well in one quarter against a bad and tired team a couple weeks ago, and then he played well. He didn't play spectacular or stellar, right? It wasn't a 400 plus yard performance with 3 or 4 touchdowns, right? But he did play well. But at some point, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and maybe he plays well against the Steelers, I don't know. But at some point, Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be due for a fall back to earth, which means he's going to start throwing picks and fumbled and blah, 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 blah. Who knows? Maybe it's this week, maybe it's next week, but it's unfathomable to think that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to string together like 10 consecutive, you know, he started last game and played well in a short stint in the game before, but like 10 plus consecutive games where he's just going to be good. I mean, if anybody thinks that's legitimately the case, I don't know what to tell you, bruh, because that's crazy. Ryan Fitzpatrick has never done that ever in his career. Ever. So it's unfathomable to think that now, at his advanced age for football, with this team, that he's somehow going to manage to string together 10 consecutive average or above games. Like, that's insanity. And so I do think that there is a high probability that Rosen comes in, even if it's, you know, spot duty in a single game, or ends up starting again at some point. I don't think it's at all improbable rather, that this coaching staff waffles as they've done all season. So, you know, we'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, I don't understand, just real quick to summarize that last point, I just don't understand why people think it's necessary to make yourselves this super bad for hopes and dreams and possibilities that give you not just no guarantee, but like really bad odds. Like, the odds are just not good, and people are on board anyway. I mean, that's literally like, you know, I mean, what comes to mind is, you know, a gambler who, you know, just, it doesn't matter how rigged the system is against him or whatever. It doesn't matter how bad the odds are. He just keeps going back until he loses absolutely everything, because he's stubborn, he's foolish, he's naive, he's desperate, he's, you know, whatever. I mean, you know, it's just, it's lunacy to me. But again, we shall see how it all plays out in the long run and see who ends up being right. And again, look, I'll say it one last time. This is how I'll wrap the video. So I want them to prove me wrong. I still don't, no matter what, at the end of the day, I'm still completely done with Stephen Ross, and I'm frankly pretty done. Yeah, I mean, I'm done with this entire coaching staff and regime from top to bottom. So the entire front office and stuff too. But I want an entire overhaul, starting with Stephen Ross. I want him to sell the team. Check out my petition. There's a link to it in all the description boxes of my videos, trying to get people to sign on to help force Stephen Ross to sell the team. You know, but that's where I think it begins. But in the meantime, this is what we have to deal with. There's no, you know, changing it right now. So, you know, we gotta deal with it how it is. But I still want them to prove me wrong, right? Like, I want them to prove themselves right. They say that they're trying to win games, but all the evidence points to that they're trying to lose games. Not just in how they've systemically designed this team, but from top to bottom, they've literally implemented a philosophy of failure. Okay, so, I mean, anybody who thinks that's going to breed wins, I mean, okay, whatever. But so, but not only because of that, but also because there's every week now there is mounting evidence to say that they are legitimately trying to, and you could even, and again, we do have to wait and see how this all eventually plays out, right? Because let's say Xavier Howard does get traded and then he goes right and he plays, right? If he plays the very next game with the team that, because he absolutely will. He's that type of corner. Certainly not a team that's going to trade for him in that kind of draft capital has, that many proven corners that he wouldn't play. So he would play immediately if he was healthy. And if they trade him and he does, well, then it just goes to show that the Dolphins are full of shit in a lot of ways. One, they'd be full of shit in how they've, handled his injury. They'd be full of shit saying that they're trying to win because they intentionally then held him out of games even though he said he was ready to play. So, I mean, look, but there's so many other things. Questionable calls on the field, questionable calls with the coin toss even, right? As I mentioned before, there's just questionable ways that they've utilized players and the positions that they put them in, right? So how they've used timeouts at various points in games. Like, there's just a lot of things that they've done, and the evidence is mounting and mounting and mounting. But, I mean, we already know that Stephen Ross dictated that this is what we were going to do this season. So it's not at all surprising. And frankly, I don't even know, as a matter of fact, I don't even know why we're giving them the benefit of the doubt at this point, right? I mean, I'm trying to be super fair because that's how I am. But really, again, and I know I said I was about to end this, but this really is how I end it. So again, we know that Adam Gase was fired in part because he wouldn't tank. In part, at the very least. I mean, you could say there's whatever other reasons, but in part because we know Stephen Ross asked him to tank and he refused. We also know that he told Brian Flores he wants him to tank, and that was part of that was a major point of emphasis in their coaching search, is that Stephen Ross wanted to tank for a quarterback high in the draft this upcoming year. Stephen Ross has even said things that would allude you to believe that we don't have any intention of winning. Like, immediately in the press conference after firing Adam Gase said, well, I hope I don't have to go 3-13 or whatever. And we're not even going to win 3 games. So it's going to be worse than that. So congratulations, Stephen Ross. But he said, I hope I don't have to go 3-13, or whatever, but it could be 1 or 2 or 3 years before we're even competitive. Now, frankly, it's going to be far longer than that because of the level to which they have taken this massive dumpster fire of a disaster. But, right, so there's overwhelming evidence. And then, of course, they clearly they did multiple purges. They clearly downgraded this roster across the board. There's questionable decisions all over the place. So if we're really being objective and looking at this honestly and being, fact-based and telling the truth, there really is no reason to give them any benefit of the doubt. The only thing that they have, the only thread of evidence really is their words, the things that they've said, because no action they've really taken has proven their words to be correct, right? Nothing they have done proves that they are really trying to win on any level. So, I mean, frankly, we should just be having the discussion that this team is clearly tanking. They are clearly intentionally trying to lose. Now, I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was I retweeted some tweet from the NFL was saying something about the Dolphins. Man, let me see if I can find it really quick. I don't think I'm going to be able to, but it was something they tweeted that more or less was kind of defending the fact that, or defending what Miami is doing. And I tweeted with a comment saying that this is essentially the NFL saying not only will they not do anything punitive against the Dolphins for intentionally tanking a season and intentionally losing just so that way they can manipulate the upcoming drafts and have control of the upcoming drafts, or what have you. Not only are they not going to do anything punitive against the Dolphins because of that, but they are also showing that they support them and they just don't care about that, right? Because the NFL doesn't have any integrity at all. They just don't. It's fucking clear. Everything they do proves that they don't have any integrity. So why are they going to do anything about it? But so, you know, because again, and I said the one reason why I feel like they wouldn't do anything about it is because they enjoyed the clown show. Because at the end of the day, it brings more attention to the NFL, more headlines, more press, and then ultimately more money. So, you know, unless the fan base, the Dolphins specifically, but NFL fans in general, because of the state of the officiating, because of their lack of transparency with like health issues. I mean, there's all kinds of scandals right now going on around the league. I mean, the Jets just cut one of their offensive linemen because he apparently needs some kind of surgery that the Jets were refusing. And I mean, come on, how many stories have there been throughout the years of teams doing all kinds of shady shit, or guys like, you know, having a concussion, but they still end up going back in and playing? Like, come on, bruh. Does anybody think really the NFL gives a shit about player safety or the quality of the game? No. They are just like any other capitalistic, greedy, money-hungry corporation in this country. And that's all they care about is their bottom line, the bottom dollar, the thing that rules everything in this world, money. So, I mean, it's just all a farce. It's all bullshit. And look, I mean, it's not even going to fucking work. So, you know, we'll see. But really, frankly, we should be having the conversation that what this team or what this organization is doing is wrong, morally reprehensible, and it should be, you know, illegal in the rules of the NFL. You should not, you know, you should not be able to intentionally, you know, make yourself as bad as possible. And again, they're, you know, a lot of the defensive injuries that we've had are in part because the defense is so ragged and worn down because they've had to spend so much time on the field just getting their ass whooped the whole time. So they are getting guys hurt. This organization is getting guys hurt. So, and not to mention the effect that all of this has on their careers and so on and so forth. So it is reprehensible and it should not be allowed. That's the conversation that we should be having, not this other fucking, you know, neutral leaning, politically correct kind of fucking bullshit narrative, you know, that there is some sort of legitimacy to what the Dolphins are doing. I'm tired of it. I went into this video trying to be super fair, and I try and be super fair, like, as much as I possibly can, but I'm just tired of it. I'm fed up with it, and I see through the bullshit, and it's all bullshit. And again, it's not even gonna fucking work. So, and there's no evidence to point towards that it can be successful. I mean, anyway, so that's what I got for you guys. I ended up like upsetting myself somehow through this. Not like upsetting myself, but I got myself a little worked up. Like I'm not mad or anything, like outrageously mad, but it does upset me like that this, you know, crap keeps happening in the NFL. And I'm not talking, again, this last part is not specifically about the Dolphins. It's about, you know, the NFL too. Like all the officiating stuff and blah, 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 as I've said. Like it's just a giant mess, and they're destroying. So it's super bad because the NFL is destroying the sport that I love, and the ownership and the power structure in my team at the organization that I love is destroying the team that I love. So it's just a super sad day to be a Dolphins / football fan. And I'm tired of it, man. And I'm ready to fucking do something about it. So one more time, and this is the end of my video. check out my petition. I put the link in the description box for every single one of my videos. If you're tired of this bullshit and you want to see a fundamental change with the Dolphins, and then hopefully eventually, you know, throughout the NFL, then join with me and sign that petition. Let's start there, and let's force Stephen Ross. The only way we're going to do it, he's stubborn, he's an old fool. He's either going to die as the owner, or he's going to, you know, he's never going to give it up on his own. He's never going to give it up on his own. He has to have pressure, and the only people that'll be able to do that are Floridians, but specifically Dolphins fans. And so let's do it. Anyway, go to that. The link is in the description box of all my videos. Check it out. If you support it, make sure you, sign that petition. All right, guys, I'm going to get up out of here. I hope you guys enjoy my videos and my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Make sure you share my channel and my videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And, of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.